The Grand Forks School Board voted not to close West Elementary School tonight. Instead, it will be part of a referendum to be decided on at a later date. Here's the full discussion at that meeting.
Neighborhood right around UND where West is located that has been fallen into decline. Despite the pressing need in Grand Forks for affordable housing, more and more homes are being converted to rental properties for students despite empty residence halls at UND. And as much as I personally like my student neighbors, this trend has taken a toll on our neighborhood as multiple dynamics have contributed to inflated rental prices and rundown property, not good for our kids. This has gradually made this area less attractive. I realize that the decline of a neighborhood is not the formal responsibility of a school district, but I also know that healthy neighborhoods play a significant role in supporting students and their families. This is a real relationship. There's a real relationship between school and community that is reciprocal and strong. In an ideal world, I wish that the city, the school district, and UND could work together on a long-range plan to ensure the health of UND's closest neighbors. Also, I hope that the school board members will recognize sorry, my hasty notes are getting away from me, almost over. I realize that school board members will recognize that the critical role played by neighborhood elementary school, which is at the heart of our local community. Over the last 23 years, I've watched the revival of the North End neighborhood around Phoenix Elementary. I can't even imagine what that neighborhood would look like today if young families attracted by the community and by its fine elementary school had not moved there. Keeping West Elementary open is in the best interest of the children and the families it serves, and that's first and foremost. But West is also a critical piece of our North End community. Please keep going.
Nancy Carrier.
Hi. I was just wondering, a few years ago, this is about like the denials of kids who couldn't go to West. We had a family friend of ours, she was a para at West, and she was gonna have her daughter go to West, but they denied her access because she didn't have a sibling that was already at West. If we're like wondering why we're so low in numbers, why at one point were they not letting single kid families into West? She was denied because she didn't have a sibling going to West, and she was going to kindergarten. So now, her mom had to drop her off at a different school and then drive to West to go to work. I don't understand the point in that, and I was just wondering.
I don't know if you want us to interact with the audience, but I think that was when we changed the boundary lines for congressional. And if you didn't have a sibling going to West, you went to Lake Davis. That was the new boundary line.
But her mom worked at West.
Where you work doesn't factor into whether you get an in-district transfer or not. That has no bearing on an in-district transfer.
We have no more cards. Is there anybody who didn't turn in a card? Anybody writing a card? Okay, at this time I'll turn this over to our board. We were given two options that were written up for us. Option one was keep West School open and incorporate West into the overall facility task force as we prepare for a referendum. Option two was close West School at the conclusion of this school year or at a future date defined by the board. Motion.
I actually have a question. I apologize for being sick at the last meeting, but I tell you I did watch the YouTube video. But I was a little confused, and I think there's some other confusion even within this memo about the option about incorporating it in the facilities task force and as they prepare for a referendum. I think there's a lot of people in the public that think that means that this is going to go to a vote in the public for this, and I just want somebody to clarify that for me and the public if they could.
Sure, Dr. Long, thank you for the question. Option one is to go into the task force study, and the task force would come back to the board and make a recommendation or recommendations to the board prior to the referendum. So the board would still make a decision prior to the referendum. I think there is a little misinformation how it was maybe printed in the Herald. It appeared that it's either going to be on a ballot or a public vote to keep West open or not, and that's not the case. The case is to roll it out of the task force or that group to study all the subjects, not just West, to study it.
Just a point of order, I'm reading some nonverbals in the audience, and I think it's a little hard to hear, so I know it's winter time and people have colds, but if you wouldn't mind just speaking directly into the microphone, that would be helpful.
Should we try it again? Okay. So I think there's a misperception that by rolling this into the task force, that means that on the ballot, whenever the referendum date is selected, that West would be a standalone item to be voted on by the public. And that's not the case. The case is to roll West into the entire facilities conversation package, along with all the other facilities, and then the task force would recommend to the board option A or option A, B, and C, and then the board would decide before the referendum what that decision would be. And that decision could be leave all the campuses open, and then we have a referendum, or it could be a combination of recommendations. We don't know because the task force isn't at work yet. That's going to be discussed here in just a little bit.
I'd like to make a motion to roll West into the general referendum work that will be done with all of the schools being considered.
Motion, second. Second. Any discussion? Okay.
Just for clarification, rather than using the word referendum, can you use the facilities task force so that people?
Oh, I'm sorry, I actually didn't see last. So I just came without reading that, I'm sorry. So I would make a motion to keep West Elementary School open and incorporate West into the overall facilities task force as we prepare for a referendum.
You did it. Your second. Okay, I know we have a motion, second, Ted.
So, I guess I struggle a little bit with being incorporated into the task force. I think it's broader than that. I mean, I don't want specific recommendations or discussion about West, even though it might be amongst facilities. I think it's the concept of small neighborhood schools that needs to be talked about. Because if that's what we want, and that's what the community wants, then there's consequences to that. And that's where I think the discussion ought to take place. As I referenced at the last meeting, if we want, and that's the intent, is to have small neighborhood schools, well, we need to consider building more schools. Because there are neighborhoods that don't have neighborhood schools today. Congressional is one of them. If that's really what we want. I mean, that's what the task force should be considering as part of their research and their discussion and the representation from the entire community that will be part of that. Do we want small neighborhood schools? And as well as that discussion, what do we mean by small neighborhood schools? So I guess I would move an amendment to the motion to refer the matter of small neighborhood schools to the task facilities committee.
I'll second.
And I was hoping I had my words ready for tonight. I'm thinking that as much as I am supportive of small neighborhood schools, perhaps we shouldn't be naming it out like that, because this is a big discussion of all neighborhood schools. I think that's what you're saying. So when I actually was prepared to talk about this a little bit with the strategic planning piece that we've got. Because I'm gonna go ahead and call out the Fargo Public Schools. In their long-range facility planning, a whole document that has guiding principles. And those guiding principles are things that we have as well, but preference of class size, that's a big guiding principle. We say that we want small elementary schools, but there's nothing right now in this draft, at least that I couldn't see, that references small neighborhood schools. And so we would want to come up with both a long-range facility planning document, which is referenced on page, I've got my other notes someplace else, but it's in this document, we'll talk about that at that time. So I think that the referendum has been confusing, the discussion around it. So what I was hoping my motion did, originally, I'm happy with the amendment, is to fold it in and have a discussion about all schools. We need to have and I wish we were further along than we are, but we need to have a full discussion of all of the schools and figure out if, as was mentioned at the last meeting, do we need another school? I mean, I know we're in deficit right now, so we can't build a school, but that's the kind of thing that I think we need to be talking about and not call out. So I apologize for reading that word, because I'd like to make that broader.
So, where I think, at least where I'm experiencing, I've never been accused of being too quiet.
First time.
Where I've encountered the confusion is exactly in I think what Dr. Long was expressing, but I think it kind of goes beyond that. I mean, the way I've described this to individuals who've asked me, well, what does this even mean with West getting rolled into the referendum? I said, well, the way I interpret it is what I would move to do is to treat all facilities on equal footing through the referendum process. And I understand the task force to be defining the measuring stick by which we're going to measure the facilities, right? So I look at it as it's not a neighborhood. That can get into the conversation around how do we define neighborhood? Is it square acres? Is it, population per, square mile? What is it that's going to define neighborhood boundaries? It could be, what is it in terms of capacity? What is it in terms of class size? What is it in terms of functional utilization? All those things go into a definition of a neighborhood school, potentially. But I think if we get down into the weeds of we're going to consider specifically neighborhood schools, we're not at a point where we've even charged the task force yet or developed it. So I'm hesitant that at this meeting we make a motion, one, call out West or call out neighborhood schools, than to just broadly say, we're going to leave West open. We are going to consider all facilities, maybe including this building, because this is a district-owned facility in the facilities master plan. And we're going to treat them all on equal footing as we go into that task force. I mean, that's what resonated most with what I think the intent is by what this is saying, but correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not the intention of this, but that's the way I've interpreted it.
Are you looking for me to respond?
Oh, no, I saw your hand going.
No.
I was just gonna say I agree. I mean, I think the decision at hand tonight is, do we close West or do we keep it open? And if we keep it open, then it's treated as any normal building. And I'm afraid that we want this process to be really driven by community input and the community task force. And if we're defining small pieces that the referendum process needs to be looking at now, I feel like in a way we're getting like the cart before the horse. And so, we have UNESCO here today. We have this, Dr. Schatz talking about the strategic plan. And so at this point, I do feel that the decision is we keep it open or we don't. If the board's will is to keep it open, then it's just treated as any normal building on an equal footing, and we continue with our process from there, with discussion about the referendum. So I don't know, I think the motion was worded as such because Matt was trying to get across a point at the last meeting, so there were bits and pieces of how he worded it, but, I definitely agree with Shannon. I think do we keep it open or not, and then if so, it just gets treated as people putting it on the other building, so.
We have a motion, we have an amendment, do we want to amend a motion to a very simple motion?
Sure, okay.
So if Cynthia, if you're willing to rescind your motion, so
Would you rescind
someone
your
can
motion
make
to-
something a little more simpler.
Or
Let's see.
rescind the second first. Okay. You rescind your amendment? We got kids in the crowd, they go to bed by 8.
Okay, so I will withdraw my, agreeable to you and somebody else in the general.
I agree with withdrawing. The amendment's been withdrawn. The second to your motion has been withdrawn. So your motion is all by itself and it may die for 5
So
seconds.
now I need to withdraw my motion? I'll withdraw my motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then can I just make a motion that we vote on whether West closes or does not close? Okay, so, is that
No.
it? Is that what?
No,
So you have to withdraw your second first.
no, we already did it.
But now you need a motion to take a vote. So instead of a motion to take a vote, you just
Just make a motion.
Oh, okay. So I will motion, what's your microphone? I will motion to keep West open.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Any more discussion?
So I'm sorry, I hate to muddle it, but so what if the referendum fails?
We go back to square two and we start all over. Figure out what we're gonna do.
Because, financially, we need money.
Yeah.
In order to, it's a little bit more, I mean, I totally respect Hal Gershman, but it's a little bit more, and I did dialogue with him about this. It's a little bit more than 2 cups of coffee, but it, was $70 million. But he and I agreed on that it's, it's doable, but it's challenging.
We have a motion and we have a second.
So, I mean, just to quickly respond to that, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, what if the referendum fails? I mean, we have so many tough decisions between now and even knowing what the referendum is and then the referendum. And if it fails, we got more tough decisions to make, and those are gonna be made at that point in time under those circumstances and those facts. I don't wanna hamstring our referendum on any one facility unnecessarily at this point without having gone through the task force process. And I think that's where we got bound up in this current conversation is we got ahead of ourselves. We didn't just let the process work like we had intended it to. At least that's the lesson I've learned, is that we gotta stick to our process and stick to our format and our framework, and we can rely on that at the end. But I don't know that now is the time or place to say the what if the referendum doesn't go forward. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Okay, at this time, we have a motion, we have a second, and the rest will remain open. Any more discussion? All in favor of said motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.